How many games should we expect the Auburn Tigers to win in 2023?
Freezing temperatures are likely for several hours inland and a few hours closer to the coast.
Yes.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Joining us today, Locked On SEC host Chris Gordy. You're high on what the Auburn Tigers have done since hiring Hugh Freeze. You were impressed with what he was able to do to salvage the class. And then obviously what he's done in the transfer portal so far, getting 12 guys. I think 8 or 9 of those guys will probably be starters, Gordy. How much of an impact do you think everything that Coach Freeze has done from a roster management standpoint since he's been hired, how much of that do you expect will translate to extra wins this season?
Well, I just look at the formula. I mean, look at what happened with LSU and Ole Miss a year ago. I'll start with Ole Miss. I mean, obviously Lane Kiffin is recruited pretty well at Ole Miss. Not, elite, but he's done well. And I think last offseason, with the advent of this new iteration of the transfer portal that we have, he looked at it and said, we're just going to go address a lot of needs via the portal, and dove in and got Jackson Dart, his quarterback from Ole Miss, got Zach Evans, his number 2 running back from SMU, or TCU rather. They had another running back from SMU. Obviously, Quinshon Judkins was a 3-star recruit last year, and he turned out to be a stud, one of the stars of the SEC this year. But I think Lane looked at it and said, we're gonna try to build that way. And look, they started 7-1. Now, on the back stretch of the schedule, they stumbled. I get it. But Brian Kelly did the same thing at LSU, coming in year one, looked at the roster, and LSU's roster was in bad shape. I mean, they were, if you watched them in that bowl game, lost to Kansas State, it was ridiculous. They started a wide receiver at quarterback. It was ugly. But he dove into the transfer portal and addressed a lot of needs on top of signing a pretty good recruiting class. And I just see some parallels here to what Hugh Freeze has done so far with this Auburn roster. It's not a roster that was in completely bad shape, but you're losing a lot of talent to the draft and, guys transferring and all that. But, man, have they addressed a lot of needs. I like the recruiting class. I think there's some hidden gems in there. But, man, through the transfer portal, the thing with the recruits is it's an unknown, right? The kid's a 4 or 5-star recruit, and, we hope he pans out. The transfers are known. You know what you're getting in Justin Rogers, a mean SOB on that D line that can eat up the run game and get after it. Brian Batty, we have film on him. We've seen what he's done.
I've been corrected. It's apparently Batty.
Okay. Well, either way, what he's done, over there in Florida, can he bring that over to the SEC? We'll see. But, man, I like all these guys and what they've been, what they look like on film. And I think it's going to translate to success for Auburn in year one. And that's why I think, manageable schedule. I think Hugh Freeze and his coaching staff hit the ground running, and I've got them at 8 wins this year.
Yeah, 8 wins. And look, this is an Auburn schedule that is more manageable than it normally is. I mean, your East opponent is Vanderbilt. Your non-conference opponent is you go to Cal. Normally it's a Penn State or a Clemson or an Oregon or a Washington. You don't have to worry about that. And everything else, it's like, okay, your toss-up games, you play a lot of them at home, Gordy. So let's play this game as we take a way too early look at all of this. But I'm just going to say the opponent, and you kind of give me either, I guess, win or loss or a maybe. So UMass, that one's obvious. Cal, that's a win, right?
Yeah, road trip. I like where it falls. I like that you get the warm-up game with UMass to kind of settle in all your guys and kind of figure out what you have, right, get your feet under you, and then go on a road trip. That's a nice road trip. Again, don't make mistakes. Don't go in there. If Robby Ashford is the quarterback and you got all this stuff figured out, don't go in there and turn the ball over 4 times. Then yeah, that's a game you could easily lose. But I like the tune-up game with UMass. You figure out, work out all the kinks, and then you go with a nice road trip out to the West Coast of Cal. What time will that game be? Will it be morning? Will it be late at night? Whatever, we'll see. But yeah, I think that's a game that with the talent Auburn's got back, that's a game they should win.
Then they return home and play Samford. Obviously, that one should be a win. Then I think the first toss-up game of the season for the Tigers as they start conference play. They play Texas A&M in College Station. And look, I think Texas A&M, the whole the Petrino thing, like, I don't know. Like, they should take a step forward as an offense, which therefore they'll take a step forward as a team. Normally, I'm kind of anti A&M every year. I'm like, they're overhyped. But we'll see where they are kind of preseason and all, like, the awards and in the preseason polls and things like that. But I think there's a chance that people may be a little too low on A&M. I think A&M could take a step forward next year.
Connor Wegman showed down the stretch of the year he can be a really good quarterback for A&M and in the SEC. So they got the hardest part figured out. They know who their guy is. Evan Stewart showed he could be, one of the dynamic best wide receivers in the SEC. I think he will be next year. Got to replace A-Chain in the run game. They get a really good stud in the name of Reuben Owens, a big 5-star running back from the Houston area. I think he's going to be their starter from day one. They got some other talented running backs that with little experience there, but I think Reuben Owens may be the bell cow. And look at where this game falls on the schedule for A&M. They're going to Miami in week 2. That was a game that was really they had to gut out that win last year in College Station, and it was amidst this spiraling, everything going wrong for them. But I don't know if A&M's winning that game. I mean, they play New Mexico and Louisiana Monroe. Outside of that, they could be sitting there at 2-1 and getting Auburn at home to open SEC play. And again, has the offense really dramatically improved with Bobby Petrino, or is it train wreck territory? Is this, he's button heads with Jimbo. They weren't balanced. They were running when they were supposed to be passing. They were passing when they were supposed to be running. And so, yeah, I mean, just look at where that falls on the schedule. It's the first SEC game for A&M, but they could already have a loss at that point, whereas Auburn maybe is feeling pretty good about themselves. And, they go into a rockin' College Station and, maybe pull out the win. We'll see. But I got
Georgia, I don't care. That one's at home. You're probably not going to win that one, but boy, would that be something if Hugh Freeze could do that. LSU, you go to Baton Rouge. I mean, historically, Auburn's not good in Baton Rouge. Got the win last time they went down there. We'll see if it happens this year as LSU's kind of coming off of this, an SEC West championship there. But once again, it's going to come down to, okay, can Robby Ashford, if Robby Ashford is the quarterback, I'm going to get your thoughts on him more specifically later, Gordy, but I think we're going to learn a lot about this team when they go to College Station. Can they take a step of who they are? And it's the week after you play Georgia, a physical team, responding to that and then going to a place where you don't win a lot, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I look back at it. One of Ashford's best passing games of last season was against LSU. And a lot of those guys that LSU had in their secondary are gone now. They're having to rebuild that entire secondary, basically. And they're doing the same thing. They're addressing the transfer portal as well. But I thought LSU did a pretty good job of bottling up Robby Ashford, his running ability. I think he only had like 20 yards rushing, but he had his best passing day against LSU. And so, yeah, I mean, to me, I look at it and say going to Death Valley prior to 2 years ago, it had been forever since Auburn had won in Death Valley, and we know it's going to be hard. So I would probably pencil in a loss, but it's not inconceivable that Auburn can't go in and win that game with Ashford with some confidence riding high. And again, maybe if you're just beating A&M, you lose to Georgia. Let's say maybe you keep it respectable against Georgia. You don't get blown out. Yeah, maybe you go into Baton Rouge feeling pretty good about yourself.
Yeah. If you can win those 3 road games if you count Cal, obviously it's going to take you a big step moving forward for the remainder of 2023. All right, the 2 Mississippi schools, Vandy and Arkansas. What do we think about those games? We'll tell you in just a moment right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Bet Online. Bet Online is the best place to wager on all of your sports action, whether it be college basketball, the NBA, and then obviously a ton of futures, NFL playoffs. They've got it all. Bet Online, it's where the game starts. Chris Gordy, host of Locked On SEC, our guest. Let's kind of pick this up just a hair. You host Ole Miss and Mississippi State in back-to-back weeks after that trip to Baton Rouge. The fact, I think we both agree these are both toss-ups, but the fact that you get them both at home almost makes me lean a little bit more Auburn's direction. I'm actually picking Auburn to win both of these games.
Yeah, I mean, you get them both at home. At minimum, I'd say 50-50. You win one, you lose one. Ole Miss, I know that one was a rough one this past year. I know Auburn was in that game, where a lot of people didn't think they would be in it. Sure. And then the fourth quarter, Ole Miss kind of pulled away. But Jackson Dart and Quinshon Judkins both back. It's going to be tough. I have big questions about Mississippi State. Will Rogers coming back. He's one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch. But I think the loss of Mike Leach is a big, big thing. How different does Will Rogers look without Mike Leach? Small sample size. I know we saw him in the bowl game against Illinois, and Illinois and Brett Bielema have one of the better defenses out there. So maybe unfair to judge him on that. But the offense didn't look all that great. I mean, they had to eke out a win against Illinois in that bowl game. So what does Will Rogers look like next year, in that offense, in that system without Mike Leach calling the plays? And maybe he does take a little bit of step back. Maybe the receiving core. I mean, they're losing Rara Thomas, their leading receiver. He's going over to Georgia. So, look, I'm trying to be the ultimate unbiased person here. But,
that's okay.
But yes, it is theoretical. Auburn can win both those games because they're at home.
At Vandy, anything to talk about there? I don't think there's much there.
I think they'll continue to improve as much as they can improve under Clark Lee. But man, they lose their best leading rusher. Ray Davis transfers over to Kentucky this offseason. They're recruiting well, just not well enough to consistently win in the SEC.
Is their quarterback still in the portal, Gordy?
So the freshman, Mike Wright was in the portal. I never heard where he ended up. AJ Swan, the freshman from last year, started a handful of games, and they like him a lot. I think Swan's going to be the starter next year.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't think we ever got a resolution on Mike Wright. He was the guy they brought to SEC Media Days and benched him, then came back in and played, beat Kentucky. So, but yeah, I just think road trip to Vandy should be like a home game for Auburn. The home environment there for Vandy is just pathetic.
Yeah, I think there'll be a lot of Auburn people there going to Nashville for the weekend. I may go to that. That sounds like a lot of fun. All right, then you go to Arkansas. What a fascinating rivalry, SEC West matchup that this is. The reasons these fan bases hate each other is kind of fun, kind of petty. A lot of that has to do with Gus Malzahn. But regardless, you and I talked about it on a radio show yesterday. Like KJ Jefferson, he's still there. I keep forgetting that he's still there, but he's just the same quarterback that he was 2 years ago to me. And is he going to magically take this next step? I'm not really buying it. And the fact that it's so close to the end of the season, this matchup is, if one team's still trending up, maybe they feel like they're fighting for something. That could go for Arkansas, or that could go in favor of Auburn. We'll have to wait and see. But once again, I think it's another toss-up game just because it's on the road.
It is, and I think that this has been a fun game to watch. Throughout the years, feels like you're always going to get Arkansas's best shot, even when they're down. But yeah, who is KJ Jefferson this year? Does he take that next step? I had an Arkansas person tell me a year ago that they thought KJ Jefferson could be in the Heisman conversation this past season. It wasn't even close, and he was missed some games, but. Look, I like him a lot. He's a gutty kid. When you need 5 yards, he'll put his head down and bulldoze, and not as effective as a Cam Newton, but he's a good physical runner. And at the goal line, he'll use his body to get in there. We saw the stupid fluke play against A&M where he fumbled at the goal line. They take it back all the way for a touchdown and lose that game. But I also look where this game falls on the schedule. Arkansas is coming off of road trips to Ole Miss, Alabama, home game against Mississippi State, and then a road trip to Florida. They're bruised and beaten at that point. And then coming home for Auburn? Yeah, we'll see what they look like at that point. But yes, I put that as a 50-50 game, but it's certainly a game that Auburn can win.
Then obviously New Mexico State. I assume that'll be the senior day and all that, or I guess that'll be homecoming, and then senior day will be the next week. We'll see. But you finish things off at home against Alabama in the Iron Bowl. Gordy, am I crazy to say that this is a winnable game?
Look, we've learned to never doubt Alabama, right? Like whenever I've questioned them, whenever I've said, oh, this might be the year they take a step back, they end up in the damn playoff or the national championship. So it is what it is. But they have a huge question, Zach, at quarterback. I mean, this is fascinating to me. I really thought Nick Saban might have entertained getting into the transfer portal and getting somebody with experience in here.
Yeah.
Evan Leary from NC State, he goes to Kentucky. Graham Mertz goes over to Florida. I mean, there's all these names that are out there in the portal, and they didn't get in on any of them. I think they liked what they saw from Jalen Milroe, in small doses. He looked pretty good coming in relief of Bryce Young in the Arkansas game, but then he looked so up and down against Texas A&M. Ty Simpson, I'm told they're very high on. He hasn't really played much in any games. Now, maybe this could be Ty Simpson wins the job, and he's the next Mac Jones. Because remember, Mac Jones, we hadn't seen a lot of him before he took over for Tua. It's just fascinating to me because Bama loses so much, Zach. Like, go look at all the guys that are going to the Senior Bowl and going to the draft and Will Anderson and Bryce Young and, the offensive lineman, Tyler Steen. I mean, there's so many guys, wide receivers. Who's their number one? We have no idea. They've recruited well. Don't get me wrong. Alabama number one recruiting classes just about every year. They got 5 stars everywhere you look. But this to me, at least in recent years, feels like one of the most unproven Alabama teams. And yes, that is the Iron Bowl is absolutely winnable. If Auburn gets all their ducks in a row and figure things out, absolutely no reason why this can't be a close game.
So I think expectations should be 8 wins in 2023. I know that's what you said. My 8 wins for Auburn are UMass, Cal, Samford, A&M, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Vandy, and New Mexico State and Arkansas. That's actually 9. That's actually 9. I think Auburn can win. I think Auburn can win all 9 of those games, Gordy.
Yeah, I think if and again, I'm here to be the unbiased party.
Sure. Yeah.
The definite losses on the schedule. I think it's Georgia. We would agree on that one. If we're being fair, I think Alabama is it's tough to beat them no matter what. So let's just say those are 2 losses. I think at LSU is the other one. Again, a place Auburn barely ever wins. So I think those 3, and then
what do you think the distance of difficulty is from at LSU and at College Station? What's the gap there as far as difficulty? We'll put Arkansas in there as well. How difficult are all of those 3 games as far as from Auburn's point of view, do you think?
I just look at quarterback. Jaden Daniels coming back for LSU. He just had a fantastic year at LSU. He's going to get better. Their leading receiver, people made such a big deal about Kayshon Boutte. Malik Neighbors was their number 1 receiving threat. He's coming back. John Emery, the running back's back. Like, they just bring back so much at LSU.
Yeah.
And Death Valley is already a hostile, tough place to play. I just think that one is the 3rd toughest. I think LSU is going to compete with Alabama for the West again. Like, everybody's going to jump on the Bama bandwagon again and pick them to win the West. I think LSU's got a great shot. So I would put Georgia, Bama, LSU as your 3 toughest games. College Station is a tough place to play, but people win there all the time. So it's not like it's a death knell to go win in College Station. It's true. Go look at their schedule last year and the year before and the year before that. Like, it's, it is a hostile environment. Those fans are rowdy. They do their midnight yell practice. They show out. But yeah, people win there all the time.
No, you're right about it. Gordy, I want to get your SEC perspective on Robby Ashford and how Auburn has handled the quarterback situation up to this point in the Hugh Freeze era in just a moment right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Built Bar. Are you looking for a delicious treat, but you don't want all the fat and calories? Then you have to try Built Bar. And look, everybody kind of sets these goals, and usually they're health related throughout the holidays. Built Bar, it's so good because, look, you're getting a chocolatey treat that tastes like a candy bar, but most of these bars, just 130 calories, 17 grams of protein, just a few grams of sugar, very, very little. We're talking like 4 grams a bar. And you don't even have to go to their website anymore. And you still can, built.com, to check out their wide selection. But now you can find them in Sam's Club and Walmart if you just can't wait for those Built Bars to arrive at your door. Chris Gordy, host of Locked On SEC. Were you surprised that Hugh Freeze, with all these guys that have come in, 12 guys via the transfer portal so far, Were you surprised that none of them were quarterbacks, Chris Gordy?
I was a little surprised. Yeah, I put that as one of my locks, one of my predictions, back in mid-December when we were just kind of looking ahead. I really thought, they flirted with the Coastal Carolina kid, Grayson McCall. For whatever reason, weren't able to get that done, and he ended up
academics, Gordy. Sounds like academics were a big part of it.
Yeah, and by the way, I talked with some head coaches just last week at the Bear Bryant Awards. Jeff Traylor from UTSA and Sonny Dykes at TCU, and they were telling me the biggest problem with the transfer portal is you got kids that want to come play for you, but all these different schools, like I transferred in college, it was a pain in the butt to transfer. I had classes that did not transfer over, and they said they're running into academic issues with kids. Colorado, Deion Sanders is running into this. There are programs, in other words, LSU offers a general studies degree. That's what a lot of the football players are on that. They just don't know what they want to study. They take that. Colorado doesn't offer that. So every one of the classes you took for that, if you try to transfer in, you've got about 30, 40 credit hours that will not transfer over. And on top of it, you got to be meeting a certain academic standard at a lot of different schools. So that's a great point you bring up. That's a problem that you're going to continue to see throughout the transfer portal. We're going to hear that a school was in on a kid and it doesn't happen. And we're going to go, what happened there? It seemed like that was a surefire bet.
Well, and so many of these kids, Gordy, they major in sports management. And Auburn, for some reason, they don't have a sports management program. They have it as a master's program, but they don't have it as an undergrad. And so this is going to be an issue for a lot of these kids. Not quite as bad as not having a general studies degree. I mean, that's going to be crucial for like the whole transfer portal navigation, but it is what it is. But yeah, I was a little surprised. They definitely seemed like they put all their eggs in the Grayson McCall basket. Seems like he wanted to come to Auburn, didn't work there. Then he checked it out at Florida, and he couldn't get into Florida either, unfortunately for him. So he's back to Coastal. It'll be interesting to see, Gordy, if they go after a guy like that after spring, if they're able to, and how much that handicaps them and kind of puts them behind the eight ball a little bit just because he wasn't at spring practice.
Yeah, and that's the other thing to remember. With the transfer portal just closing, it will reopen again, and we will see guys on the move again. And keep in mind, there was a lot of movement last year post spring, with guys moving around, and so I would not be surprised. And then there's the other guys still at Auburn. Is there something in Holden Garriner? Is there something in TJ Finley? Where are we on him? Is he ever going to play football again? I don't know.
It is. Everybody's assuming he graduates at the end of spring. And so we're all just kind of assuming he'll go through spring and then he'll be able to grad transfer, right? But I saw somebody mention this. I don't know if it was on Twitter or a message board or what, but it's a fascinating thing to think about. And I'll probably do a show on this at some point where what if TJ doesn't transfer and he really wants to fight and be a starter again? I mean, he won the job going into last year. It's a different offense. I don't think the fit is quite as perfect as it was a year ago under what Brian Harsin was trying to do, whatever he was doing on offense. But that is an interesting potential storyline that we could run into. What if TJ goes in there and slings it all over the place?
And that only spells good things for Robby Ashford, because it means you're pushing him a little more, making him earn it, rather than just going, well, we don't have anybody else. So Robby, no matter what you do in the spring, it's your job. So good luck. No, I mean, that's really what I thought, and to bring it back to LSU, that's what they did a year ago with Jaden Daniels. I thought with Miles Brennan was there, everybody thought Miles Brennan was going to be the starter. And we're like, oh, maybe Jaden Daniels coming in just to push him, and not only pushed him, earned the starting job. And so that's where I said, I would have, if I'm Hugh Freeze, I would have tried to bring in anybody, just to push Ashford and make him earn that job. But you were asking me, where does he rank? Zac, there's a lot of good quarterbacks coming back in the SEC next year. We already touched on Will Rogers, Jaden Daniels at LSU, KJ Jefferson at Arkansas. How about Spencer Rattler back at South Carolina? I didn't think that was going to happen at some point.
Yeah.
Connor Wegman at A&M showed a little something, like we said, as a freshman. AJ Swan at Vandy, Brady Cook at Missouri, I think got better, as the year went along. So those are all the guys that are back. And, Robby Ashford's in that group. If you just look at Robby Ashford, the numbers on paper, it's not pretty. It doesn't look sexy. But I do think, man, it is going to be night and day. I think you're going to see a much better Robby Ashford in a Hugh Freeze offense, because it's just so tailored more to suit the quarterback's needs. And when you have that running ability too, man, it's next level. We saw it at Ole Miss. We saw it at Liberty. I fell in love with Malik Willis, in that Hugh Freeze system. And I think Robby Ashford's going to benefit truly from it.
Chris, Gordy, how can people check out everything you got going on, buddy?
Yeah, just Locked On SEC wherever you get your podcast. And we'll have some guests join us along the way. Maybe an Auburn Tiger or two coming here in the spring.
Fantastic. Yeah, be sure to make Locked On SEC your second listen. We'll be back tomorrow. Should be a little Ferg Friday action, as well as Zep Jasper joining the show. Until then, check out all my written work at auburndaily.com, and we'll see you tomorrow. This has been Locked On Auburn.